on 10 outcomes-based practices. And in addition, an assessment at different levels beyond the standard itself is possible, and I'll refer to this later. So let's look at the basic framework of investors in people and consider why this approach might be appealing and why people think it adds value. This is the basic virtuous circle of investors in people around planning, doing and reviewing. And this means developing strategies to improve the performance of the organisation. It means taking action to improve the performance of the organisation. And it means evaluating the impact of those actions on the performance of the organisation. And some of you at first glance might think that that's nothing new. Surely all organisations, whatever size, whatever value, whatever complexity, should be considering how best to improve their performance. They should be taking action to do so, and they should be evaluating that action. However, what we find is that although people, particularly managers, know this, they often fail to put the concept into practice consistently. And indeed, one of the outcome requirements asked of investors in people, which is most often a challenge, says to managers, can you describe the skills and behaviours that staff need to lead, manage and develop others? Can you describe the word being described? In other words, managers must be clear about their role in developing others. Without such leadership, none of the aspects of this virtuous circle will be properly controlled or fully beneficial. The underlying demands behind this apparently simple construct begin to show when we start to look more deeply into the question. Companies need to know what's happening internally in the areas of planning and of human resource activities, those which are directly impacting on the business and those which are less effective. And in all areas it starts to become increasingly apparent it's the behaviour of individuals and the application of their skills and competences which has the greatest effect on performance. So within that planning, doing and reviewing circle, pushing outwards, what we say to organisations is you must have a clear business strategy. As an organisation, you must be able to say where you're going. You must have a learning and development strategy linked to that business strategy. You must have a people management strategy linked to that business strategy. And you must be developing leaders and managers in the context of that business strategy. In terms of the doing, the action part, you must be doing things that increase management effectiveness. You must be involving and empowering staff. You must be doing learning and development of staff. And you must be applying recognition and reward. And in reviewing, you need to be looking at performance management and how all of that feeds into continuous improvement. Again, an example of the words behind the diagram should serve to indicate how we ask whether learning and development is focused learning and development. In other words, does it link to business goals? We ask managers to give examples of how learning and development has improved the performance of their team and the organisation. The critical thing there being they have to give examples. It's no use they're just saying, yes it has. We ask them why, how, and to give examples. So we've moved from the idea of managers knowing what they must do to a position of considering how effectively they're doing it. In none of this are we looking for systems and processes, nor the imposition of rigid conformity across companies, or indeed across geographical boundaries. What we're looking for is effective outcomes in the areas under discussion. If a company chooses to have the independent assessment against investors and people, which I mentioned earlier, a consultant assessed report will highlight where things are working well within this circle and where they could be improved, and will then make a recommendation as to whether the company is operating at the high levels demanded by investors and people, or whether there's still work to do. In addition to its ability to support organisational learning like this through individual development, investors in people is also a means by which to cultivate and develop domestic human capital, either for work at home or for work overseas, because it allows governments to set standards for human capital development, and that gives comfort to incoming enterprises to ensure that staff in country will have a level of expertise in their role appropriate to their job. In other words, it allows government to say, the needs of this country in terms of skills are X, Y, and Z. The current level of skills are A, B, and C. The learning gap is therefore, and then take action to fill the gap. So it helps organisations to channel and direct talent at home and overseas through a demand for clarity of role and purpose within the organisation, and for the evaluation of staff development against individual roles and purposes. Such approaches, however, can only work if leaders and managers are leading and managing effectively. The proper development of staff by managers is key to global talent management. Investors in people hold management development itself to be a key principle in organisational success. Any organisation must be in a position to tell managers what good management looks like. In other words, what their role and purpose is. Because without that clarity, management talent is less than fully efficient, and managers cannot explain how they are effective. So any return on investment in management development, either at an organisation or a country level, cannot be fully understood. I said I'd provide some short anecdotes about how investors in people has been used, and I'd like to refer to its use as a tool by a government, as well as by three well-known companies which operate globally. First of all, governmentally, the Investors in People standard has been taken up in a number of areas, but most notably in South Africa, where it's being used countrywide to monitor the effectiveness of an upskilling program that's been running there since the year 2000. A huge skills development structure has been put in place there to bring workforce skills up to the levels that should have existed had large proportions of the country not had learning opportunities curtailed under apartheid. Investors in People has been used to judge the impact on companies of these new training and development programs, and thus the overall effect on the economy as a result of productivity increases in such companies and in government departments. In companies, examples of the success of Investors in People are numerous, but perhaps three well-known examples will suffice. And firstly, I'd like to use the case of Fujitsu. In the United Kingdom, Fujitsu took over ICL, a company which some of you may remember. And ICL was already using the Investors in People standard. During the takeover by Fujitsu, Investors in People was seen as a constant, which allowed staff to retain clarity of goals while surrounded by change. As a result, Fujitsu still see Investors in People as of considerable value. And here's an extract from a presentation that they actually give on our behalf. And they start by showing where Fujitsu sits within the globe. $4.6 billion leader in IT systems, highest share of the IT services market in Japan, third highest worldwide. So they position themselves. They then go on to say that Fujitsu Services has been an investor in People since 1992 and was the first IT company to be awarded the standard and was reassessed in 2005. They then list the benefits: improvement in people management practices, validation of training and development activities, qualification for bids, customer reassurance, increased scores on employee opinion surveys, improved customer satisfaction scores, etc. The list goes on. So we have an example here of an international company at the leading edge of technology using the Investors in People thought process over a considerable time with defined benefits. Secondly, I'd like to mention TNT, the Worldwide Logistics Group. They have worldwide Investors in People accreditation and see it, because it's outcomes-based, as a way of ensuring effective levels of service that still allow for local processes and cultural differences. TNT cites Investors in People as having improved productivity by up to 45% in some areas. And their aim in using the standard was to ensure that customer service experiences were similar wherever in the world the customer was located. The use of the outcomes-based approach by our Investors in People was able to ensure that local processes based on local cultural practice could be used to provide the same levels of service worldwide, leading to the improved sales just mentioned. And finally, I'd like to refer you to McDonald's. In the United Kingdom, McDonald's recently ran a successful recruitment campaign following accreditation against the Investors in People profile tool, which I'll finish with in a moment. But some of you, however, first of all, might recognise the lights of Piccadilly Circus in London. That was in the Piccadilly Circus for 3 months. It's the Investors in People logo, plus the McDonald's recruitment logo, were prospected, not bad for a job. So I hope I've been able to start to draw together some thoughts from various sources and to look at how Investors in People might be a practical means of beginning to implement learning at all levels in any company in a structured and cost-effective manner. But I did say earlier that Investors in People is always developing. This is in response to requests from users, and I mentioned profile. So in 2005, we extended the reach of Investors in People as a framework to allow companies to determine not only if they were operating to standard, but how well. And that's the framework I mentioned in relation to McDonald's. So on a scale of 1 to 4, therefore, companies can now probe deeply into their organizational culture, some would argue the heart of learning, and look for areas where improvements can be made at a fundamental level, where the values, goals and policies of the company are linked to the values, goals and goals of individuals through sharing, communication and feedback. And our own research indicates that companies who use the Investors in People approach do better in their sector than those who do not. And that's not purely because of the nature of the standard. It's because underpinning it is that cycle of good practice, which makes management sense, and which is outcome-based. That needs to motivate its staff, and thus helps to address some of the issues that companies will face during the next decade of the 21st century. So to conclude, I'd like to urge you to think of the Investors in People standard as a practical representation of organizational learning, which helps companies to build up a base of organizational knowledge through a learning culture, and to continue to build up the capacity for their people to learn appropriately and apply that learning quickly and effectively within the organisation, however wide that organisation's boundaries may be. Investors in People provides a framework for thought that frees leaders to concentrate on strategic issues by ensuring development needs at all levels are properly and fully addressed. And if you'd like to look at Investors in People in more detail, I direct you to our website, which is www.investorsinpeople.co.uk. Thank you.
들으신 것보다 더 많은 내용들이 있지만 시간이 한정이 되어 있어서 간단한 요약 설명에 그친 것을 양해해 주시기 바랍니다. 혹시 지금 발표해 주신 IIP에 대해서 질문이 있으신 분 있으시면 한두 분 질문을 받도록 하겠습니다. 무선 마이크 있습니까? 예. 시간이 없기 때문에 한두 분 질문을 받고 그 다음 프레젠테이션으로 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. 없으면 다음 프레젠테이션으로 넘어가겠습니다. 간단히 말씀드리면 저희도 지금 The Best HRD라고 하는 프로그램이 있습니다. 올해부터 시범사업을 작년까지 마치고 본 인증사업에 들어가게 되는데 이 인증사업이 이런 IIP, 싱가포르의 People Development를 벤치마킹해서 시행하고 있는 그런 제도임을 참고로 이해해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 다음 프레젠테이션 싱가포르 테크놀로지 엔지니어링의 Mr. Harnek Singh 씨가 프레젠테이션을 해주시겠습니다. Mr. Harnek Singh 씨께서 해주실 프레젠테이션은 Learning Organization and Global Talent. 여러분들 혹시 싱가포르에 대해서 좀 아시는 분은 싱가포르 테크놀로지 엔지니어링이라는 회사가 싱가포르에 있는 몇 개의 홀딩 컴퍼니 있습니다. 그 중에서도 가장 유명한 홀딩 컴퍼니가 타마섹 홀딩 컴퍼니에서 우리나라에도 이 타마섹 홀딩 컴퍼니가 투자한 지분이 있는 그런 이퀴티가 있는 그런 자산 투자가 주로 하고 있는 그런 홀딩 컴퍼니입니다. 홀리컴퍼니 하나의 회사로서 싱가포르 테크놀로지 엔지니어링이라고 하는 회사에서 비즈니스 엑셀런스 모델을 개발하고 시행해 나가는 그런 역할을 맡고 있는 분이십니다. 이분은 이 직책 말고도 싱가포르의 어떤 그 품질 경영 품질 향상을 위해서 민데프라고 미니스트리 오브 디펜스에서도 상당히 그 자문 역할을 많이 하고 있고 또 다양한 국가 사업에서의 어떤 위원회에 참여하고 있는 분이십니다. 그러면 미스터 하넥 센스를 뜨거운 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Chang. Very good afternoon, fellow distinguished delegates, panelists and speakers. I'm very privileged to be here and very delighted at this very important forum to have the opportunity to share with you our Singapore Technology Engineering business excellence journey, in particular how it was supported by the People Developer People Excellence Initiative. The limited time, I'll very quickly give you a short introduction of our company, and then I follow up with the business excellence journey. In particular, I will highlight the role of leadership, the challenges that we face in implementing that, and the benefits that we have by using the frameworks, and of course some of the success factors before I move on to the People Developer Framework and in particular the People Excellence Initiative. And very quickly I will just show you the tool that we have, but we will not go into details, but you have an appreciation of what's the tool that we have before I conclude. Singapore Technology Engineering, we are in 4 main businesses. One is in aerospace, the other is in electronics, and we are in land systems too, where we make the equipment for the military and also large vehicles, and we also in marine. In Korea, we have an associate called RF Korea, and we are in 30 cities in 17 countries. We have a staff strength of 16,000, and of which about 5,000 are engineers. We need engineers, we need to do R&D because we need to innovate to really go up and grow. It's very, very important for us because our customers are very demanding, and our customers are typically the defense arms of Singapore and also other customers from other countries, and of course we've got also commercial customers and building owners. The Singapore Technology Business Excellence journey started when we amalgamated the 4 main businesses, which is aerospace, electronics, land systems and marine in 1997, and Singapore Technology Engineering was formed into a company and was listed. Since then to now, we've been adopting a lot of best practices, and you can see in 1998 we were among the pioneer group of companies in Singapore to be recognized for People Developer. People Developer Standard was introduced in Singapore in 1997, and in 1998 companies were invited to vie for the standard, and from the 23 companies who were first recognized, 8 were from our company. And since then, we've been bringing in more and more best practices, and we integrate these best practices into our systems and processes. We don't add on more and more, but we review our processes and we build in the best practices so we can value add and we can leverage on the strength of the best practices. We use the business excellence model, which is the Singapore Quality Award framework. This framework is benchmarked and aligned to the Baltimore National Quality Award, the EFPM model, the European Quality Award, the Australian Business Excellence Award. So these leading awards in the world, they meet regularly. Right now they're meeting in Budapest, Hungary. Every year they meet to benchmark, to learn what is there that we can do to improve the models and improve the assessment robustness. So we use this framework to help us to strengthen our company so that we can achieve our vision to be a global defense and engineering company. From 1997,
we use the beacon, which is the same framework. We have the building blocks, which are typically all the people engagement activities, the DQP, the QMS systems that we have, and from there, we use the business excellence model to assess ourselves, which we call beacon. Beacon is an acronym for Business Excellence Assessment for Continuous Improvement. And you get assessed by the national authority called SPRING, it's the Singapore Productivity, Innovation and Growth Board. And we get recognized and we get certified to Singapore Quality Plus. All our Singapore companies, 25 of them plus the corporate HQ are all Singapore Quality Plus. And in 2002, we aligned everybody and we got ourselves assessed for the award level, which is the Pinnacle Award in Singapore for Business Excellence. And we were the Singapore Quality Award winner in 2002. Some of the other awards that we have, from 2002 onwards, we also were recognized for the Singapore Innovation Award. We were able to demonstrate and show our innovation capabilities, our innovation strength in products, in people, and we got recognized for that. And we were the only winner that year. And of course, going forward, we also got recognized in the US Tech Museum Award Health category. This is the award that given US San Jose. And last year, we also were recognized at the International Asia Pacific Quality Award, Best in Class Distinction. So we use these frameworks to assess what we're doing, to strengthen our processes, and to make sure that we're able to get maximum value from our colleagues' inputs and from the processes that we have. Leadership in ST engineering is key to whatever success that we have achieved thus far. And these are some of the key roles that we have. All of them, from the CEO, president, down up to the GMs of the various subsidiaries, they must be familiar with the business excellence criteria framework. If not, it's very difficult for them to be involved, to be hands-on, to set direction, to provide guidance. They cannot leave it to me because I'm the Vice President Director of Business Excellence. I'm just a facilitator. I'm just the subject matter expert. I can give them the inputs, but they must understand and they have to use it. And of course, because we have 4 businesses, we have many subsidiaries, we will have different views. So they must resolve, disagreement, different views, so that we continue moving. And they must continue to communicate. There's no end to communication. As they communicate today, tomorrow things have changed a bit. So within a reasonable time of 6 months, new things should be updated. And they need to walk the talk. They must lead the assessment, they must lead the preparation for the assessment personally, and people must see them being involved. Only then the rest will believe that yes, we are doing the right thing, and let's follow the leader. And of course, recognition is key. We need to recognize staff who exhibit the values, and of course, periodically we must review progress. In anything you do, there will be challenges. And some of our key challenges are, in addition to saying that the bosses were involved, the leadership was involved, there were also some who may have just come on board from other organizations who have done things differently. So we need to engage them to show the same kind of commitment and involvement. So we need to bring them hands-on again. And the other challenge we have is everybody across the whole organization must understand what this framework is all about. Only then they can contribute, and improvements will be based on understanding what the standard is asking. Of course, there will be some who will have a tendency to ignore existing processes, existing approaches in this company that we have that have been able to get us so far today. So we need to get these process owners more actively engaged to understand that these processes are there, they're getting results, you have to improve it, use the framework, measure, identify the opportunities and improve. Of course, there are also some who take the business excellence as a project. Business excellence framework cannot be a project. It is a tool to measure your business, to identify the gap, and we should need to do it on an ongoing basis. And some people think that business excellence do not apply to me because I'm a marketer, I'm out of. It applies to everybody. If you do not have the right marketing strategies, do not have the right processes to support you for your marketing, of course your marketing will be less effective. Similarly, last point is MVP. Even MVP here is most available person. When the most available person is given a job, it's very unlikely you will see success. But if you give it to the most achieved person to do the job, you may see success because the most achieved person possibly is talent, spotted for higher positions, and people will see him as a leader and they will follow him. Some of the key benefits that we have is, first of all, the framework forces us to benchmark. To be an SPO winner, we have to benchmark internationally. So we benchmark against other winning companies in other national frameworks across the world. And it also forces us to adopt a robust system to review and to see that whatever we're doing is aligned. So there's a clear line of sight why we're doing it and where we are going. You can set clear milestones for your journey. You can measure yourself, see where you're going, and you can review your approaches and fine-tune it to make sure you're on the right path. And one very important benefit we have is we get external feedback from parties who have no interest in the organization to tell you how you're performing, what your strengths are, and what your opportunities are. And finally, the main benefit is for us at SP Engineering is we want to be a global company. We need to create market differentiation to show that we have got robust processes. Customers have got more confidence in us, and business will definitely grow. And we have seen this happening to us now. Some of the other benefits is able to use a common language that promotes benchmarking, best practice sharing, and also able to see how the work fits in, and to make sure that everyone is moving in the same direction. Some of the key success factors, our bosses right from the top, the number one man, he is in charge of the leadership component of the business excellence framework, and he's also in charge of the results. And of course, the other presidents cover the other part of it. And we align our subsidiaries to our business areas to the group. So it's a 70-30 principle that we have. 70% approaches must be aligned, 30% we allow customization because of the unique nature of the business. Then we use the people excellence framework to actually push ourselves up. And what is people excellence? It's typically developing our people to be the best and then engage our people. And as we engage our people, we're also developing them to be able to contribute to the business excellence journey. So in Singapore, we have people developer as a standard at 400 points, and people excellence award if you are best of the best of the people developers. And typically, for the people developer in terms of training and development, we have these 8 systems: learning needs analysis, career development, induction, resource allocation. We make sure that we monitor whatever we have planned and executed. We evaluate what we're doing, and we review to improve our processes. And we have 55 statements, and I'm not going to go through this, and these are the 55 statements. But more importantly here, you find in people, training and development is where we want people to show you have a learning plan, individual learning plan, do you have analysis done, why you're going for this training, is there career plans for you? For high cost, means high potential, we have a career development plan for those people. So we cover people in all the categories, from leadership to strategy to information, ask people, and of course, we have to measure results. Are you bringing the results? People being trained, people being engaged, is it impacting the bottom line? And of course, in summary, people excellence is about supporting the overall framework. And this is like people excellence is a journey, there's no end point. And as the world changes, we'll continue to use this framework to improve ourselves. So in summary, the combination of business excellence must be hands-on leadership, alignment, good business process knowledge, must have proactive systems, you must be innovative, look for best practices, and this will bring about success for your company. So Hamida, thank you very much.
싱가포르는 이런 말콤 바지의 그 퀄리티 어세스먼트 툴을 벤치마킹해서 people developer 제도라든지 그 중에서도 또 가장 우수한 기업을 people excellence award를 준다든지 해서 국가의 경쟁력을 높이기 위해서 이런 제도들을 수단으로 해서 학습 조직으로 옮겨 나가는 그런 제도를 잘 설명해 주셨습니다. 혹시 프로에서 이 제도와 관련돼서 질문이 있으신 분 있으면 혹은 논의할 사항이 있으신 분은 손을 들어주시겠습니까? 네, 그러면 나중에 종합적으로 질문이 나오실 거로 기대하고 다음 순서로 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. 다음 발표는 미스터 리우 쟁 롱 씨인데요. 이분은 현재는 랭시스 AG의 인적자원 바이스 프레지던트로 근무하고 계십니다. 시니어 바이스 프레지던트로 근무하고 계십니다. 원래 태어나시기는 중국 상하이에서 태어나셔가지고 거기서 공부도 하시고 나중에 독일에 유학을 가셔서 거기서 수련을 쌓고 교육학 분야의 수련을 쌓고 바이오라고 하는 회사를 아시는 겁니다. 바이오 회사에서 인적자원 담당 간부로 일을 해왔었습니다. 최근 독일로 다시 넘어가셔서 랭시스 컴퍼니의 시니어 바이스 프레지던트로 일하고 계십니다. 미스터 리우께서는 developing local ties to make a strong global company between theory and practice 이론과 현실사에서 어떤 비리를 여러 가지 장애 요인과 이네이블러들을 중심으로 해서 설명을 해주시겠습니다. 그럼 미스터 리 씨를 따뜻한 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
Dear Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for a nice introduction. Honorable guests, dear fellow HR colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to be invited to be part of this distinguished panel and to be able to speak in front of you. If I can be honest with you, when the invitation first reached me several months ago, I was hesitant at the beginning, not knowing how I should respond. The company I work for, the LANXESS Group, headquartered in Germany, with $9 billion sales turnover every year, 17,000 employees, half of them in Germany, is not the typical corporation that is usually picked as a showcase for learning organization. As the chairman has already mentioned during the introduction, spun off from the Bayer Group less than 2 years ago with mostly low-margin chemical business. We were fighting for survival from the very beginning. We operate in an industry that has been squeezed between rising raw material costs and the permanent and constant downward pressure on the cost side. Those who are familiar with the European chemical business would know that the LANXESS Group has been doing a fantastic job. The company went through a comprehensive global restructuring. It brought down its debt by 50%, doubled its market capitalization, all during the same time, during the past 18 months. This is a wonderful turnaround story for the equity market, maybe also for the industrial observers. But one may rightly ask, what is the link between such a company with the topics of the global HR forum? That was my thinking at first as well. In the end, it was the following two considerations that finally convinced me to join the panel and to share with you some of my personal thoughts. First, I think LANXESS Group is still, in a way, very typical. There are numerous global companies, the so-called multinationals, that are struggling to come to terms with a dramatically changing business and a competitive environment. Much shorter product life cycles, endless new players entering the competition field. I come from China, I know what I'm talking about. And an increasing internal organizational complexity, combined with higher planning uncertainty on the marketplace. For many of these companies, including the company of my own, when it comes to building a learning organization and cultivating talent development, the gap between theory and practice, between the wishables and the affordables, is steadily growing these days instead of diminishing. So what should be done? What shall we as global players do these days to cope with this new challenge? Second, as an HR professional working in Asia and in Europe, and now with a group-wide HR responsibility, I have witnessed many, in fact I believe too many, training and development programs that didn't work, that fell apart. Some as quickly as the ink dries. Others have never delivered the results they promised on paper. Still others degenerated over the years into a routine exercise just to please the board or the public without any practical relevance. What did those failures occur? Why? What are the lessons to be learned? These two rather practical questions brought me here, more in search of answers than to make lecture on them. I think it's good to devote our precious time to these two professional questions, and I believe these two questions deserve some attention in a global HR forum as it is here today, because these two issues are in their very nature not company-specific challenges, but global matters. And as far as I can tell, not much research has been done on these topics so far. Admittedly, theory and practice are bound to be divided by a gap. In terms of learning organization and staff development, what in my view might be new is the factor of globalization. To be more precise, the evolving impact of globalization is widening the gap between theory and practice in corporate training and development activities, as well as in the efficiency and the credibility of the talent management within a global organization. Talking about globalization today, on the surface at least, the roles seem to be very clearly defined. Governments in the developed nations have been fighting an uphill struggle to control the side effect of globalization. Besides plant closures, rising unemployment, crisis in social security, governments in the Western Europe countries are now facing an increasingly vocal and critical public opinion about the negative impact of globalization on their own societies. As a sharp contrast, multinational companies, most of them actually headquartered in these Western countries, appear to be the self-confident driving force of globalization, taking advantage of their global market presence, taking advantage of the huge liquidity on the financial markets, and taking advantage of the powerful IT infrastructure. However, I believe this picture is deceptive. It's far away from reality. The challenge posed by globalization are unfinished business, not only for nations and the governments, but also for multinational corporations. Despite their self-confident appearance and the seemingly unlimited ability to deploy and reallocate resources. Many of these big companies are in reality yet to become a truly global company. The subject of our session, Learning Organization Global Talents, is the very good example to illustrate the new dimension of challenges posed by globalization. And I believe the key of a successful internal globalization within the minds of our top management and employees. This is the key for the success or failure, not the policies and HR systems on paper, not the HR development tools or systems on the shelf. When it comes to creating learning organization and development talent, in fact, I believe the lineup of helpful tools has never been more impressive. The quality has been high, the variety is huge, and the accessibility, thanks to the spread of internet, is almost guaranteed these days around the world. Without exception, national champions and global industry leaders now have a sophisticated arsenal of HR development tools. Assessment center, individual group training programs, 360 feedbacks, you name it. While this is true, HR development tools has never been better. Paradoxically, once they are integrated into a company system, many of them are not producing satisfactory results. For example, have you already heard about the debate, how far can learning really go? We are talking about learning organization. It has long been accepted that corporate learning must not be centered on classroom teaching or standard knowledge. And I believe rightly so. Instead, it is a common wisdom that learning in a global corporation means, in the first place, the transfer of expertise, transfer of knowledge within the same organization. As the multinational company itself is a miniature of globalization, with different business lines, different country organizations competing for limited resources and management attentions. The sharing of expertise these days are often seen as losing it. This unwillingness to share expertise among the same country, the same company, is rooted in the anxiety about losing one's own competitive edge, which is closely related to the fears of job security. To be fair, creating a genuine learning organization has never been easy. Just think about the motto, knowledge is power. While this behavioral barrier is not yet overcome, worries about job security is now adding an additional and even more serious challenge these days on building a learning organization. I believe the knowledge is power mentality can somehow be effectively dealt with, for example, by a carefully orchestrated revamp of company culture. This time along, with job security being the blockade in mind, it is doubtful from my personal perspective whether board commitment or HR initiatives will be still sufficient and effective as remedies alone. There is another good example. Succession plan on the paper does not always match the actual promotions in the global companies. Professor Jeffrey Jones wrote in the Harvard Business Review just in October this year. The influence of nationality on multinational corporations is still very strong today. The composition of board of directors remains heavily biased towards home country nationals, despite the fact that equity ownership of large corporations is now widely dispersed among countries. I would say, looking beyond the boardrooms, home country bias can also be observed at senior hierarchy levels in companies of all different nationalities and cultural backgrounds. In other words, it is legitimate to ask, is all the talk about grooming global talents really honest and credible? It is doubtful whether multinational companies would ever produce global talents. What these companies want to achieve, and I know they must, is to develop local talent in all strategic important markets in order to stay competitive. In fact, globally mobile senior executives can only be successful in the places where they are supported by talented local managers. The problem is only, years later, many talents, especially those working outside headquarters, have stayed where they are, and that there appears to be no way forward, or better to say, no way upwards. This phenomenon also arises from the home country bias, also known as the glass ceiling effect. You can see it, but you can never touch it. This creates a vicious circle. It starts with the reluctance to let talents in overseas countries grow quickly by giving them real, big, meaningful responsibilities. Yet, unless this happens, the so-called talents will gradually fall back into the category of average performance. This typical self-fulfilling prophecy reinforces again the extremely cautious approach at the management level where key personnel decisions are made. My last example is on the developing talent in the areas of globalization comes from the complaints by many multinationals about lack of loyalty, particularly in the emerging markets. One common argument is, we as a company do value training and development, but what purpose does it serve if our employees, say in China, stay with us no more than 2 years on average? I think over here, the company management will not be enough just to complain about the low level of loyalty. Company management in the Western headquarters needs also to ask themselves, did we overlook something? I think we did, and we still do, many of us. Namely, the factor of trust. You cannot only discuss loyalty without also considering how much trust are you giving to your local talents and local managers in the emerging markets like China, India, and also countries like Korea and Singapore. All those countries outside the headquarters. Ladies and gentlemen, globalization has brought with it an era in which the success in creating a learning organization and building talents depends less on the quality of HR development tools. Assembling the right HR toolbox alone is no longer the real differentiator. Developing human capital, cultivating local management, enhancing ethnic diversity at the top executive level may be a common goals of all multinationals, but these goals will only be reached by those who are sensitive towards the issues like home versus abroad, local versus global, and trust and loyalty. And as they move in this direction, they will have to rely much less on standard solutions or best practices. The right answers will have to come from inside the organization through intensive and open dialogue on both the identity and the destination of each of our companies. Thank you very much.
류 씨께서 단지 학습 조직을 HR 이슈로 볼 것이 아니라 cultural differences, diversity and sensitivity를 확대 발표를 해주셨습니다. 혹시 이 이슈에 관해서 관심이 있는 분, 혹시 이런 질문을 하고 싶으시면 손을 들어주시겠습니까? 이분하고 저기 지금 손 들으려고 준비했던 분이세요? 여자분 손을 드셨어요?
Okay, I'm the HR major in Women's College in Korea, so I'd like to ask some questions. Can you tell me again what kind of program is the best practice for developing the local talent if you have in your company?
Thank you for raising this question. As I'm trying to say in my speech, for multinationals these days, I think it is a matter of self-understanding that you have a comprehensive tools and a combination of tools to train and develop your people. Also, we have this. But in my personal opinion, the most decisive factor is not giving these people training, is give them the right responsibility at the earliest possible time. Doing this requires courage. Doing this requires risk-taking at the highest level. My CEO took me, a native-born Chinese, to be the global HR head of a typical big German corporation. Is an example of risk-taking. And this again sets further examples in the entire organization to encourage managers to give young potentials, talents, big responsibilities at early possible stage. I think if you combine these two and put more emphasis on the later part of it, you can be more successful these days than if you only look into training and development.
다른 질문 있으시면 네, 그럼 일단 한 분 더 질문을 받고 그다음에 다음 순간 발표로 넘어가겠습니다.
Thank you for your sharing your perspective to us. My name is Julie. I'm in Chang Graduate School of Business MBA program in Shanghai. I have a question for you. It could be a personal one. I never see any human resources department director who has a job in European corporation. So I think as a MBA student, I'm right now preparing for my job career development process. This is a process period 1. So I'm very curious about this point. How did you package yourself when you sell yourself to as a director position, senior vice president position in European corporation? This is my question.
Thank you for your kind question. In fact, I didn't try to package myself. I think the advantage of us working in growth markets, I believe also Korea is growing 5% every year, China is growing almost double-digit every year. For so-called talents or would-be managers working in developing markets, you have much better opportunities to demonstrate your skills and train your capabilities. This has been my fortunate circumstance. After my graduation, I went back to China and worked for the Bayer Group. And over there, in an expanding market, dramatically expanding organization, this is the best way for you, for each individual to learn and to develop. The fact that I'm now doing this much bigger job from Germany, this was never planned. And also I didn't work for that way. But I believe working in such a growth market just offers above average opportunities for all those management hopefuls that I would call. And I wish you good luck on that way as well. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다. 유한-김벌리의 평생학습 이 사례를 여러분들과 나누게 돼서 참 기쁘게 생각합니다. 자료는 영어로 되어 있지만 설명은 또 좋은 통역사가 계시기 때문에 우리말로 요점만 정리해서 보고 드리도록 하겠습니다. 저희 유한-김벌리는 1970년에 한국의 유한-양현과 미국의 킴벌리 클럽 사이의 합작 투자로 시작을 했습니다. 유한-양현은 금년에 80년 된 우리나라 가장 오래된 기업이고 그 성실성과 사회봉헌 등으로 그리고 창업자이신 유일한 박사님의 훌륭한 그 경영인상으로 유명하고요. 킴벌리 클락사는 이제 130년이 넘은 미국의 유수기업이고요. 짐 콜린스가 Good to Great라는 책에서 열 손가락에 꼽히는 Great Company를 정의를 내렸는데 꼽았는데 그 중에 하나가 킴벌리 클락사입니다. 저희 회사는 헬스 앤 하이진, 건강 위생 부문의 대표적인 생활용품 사업을 하고 있고요. 주요 브랜드로는 페미닌 케어가 여성용품, 화이트라든지 좋은 느낌이라든지 그런 여성용품, 인펀 케어, 하기스, 기저귀, 차일드 케어, 애덜 케어, 노인용품, 그 다음에 여러분들이 잘 아시는 클리넥스라든지 스카피라든지 호피라든지 하는 화장지들이 저희 유한-킴벌리의 브랜드가 되겠습니다. 저희 이 산업 부문에서 우리 한국에서의 주요 경쟁자는 세계적인 플레이어들과 이 아시아에서의 아주 강력한 경쟁사들이 다 들어와 있습니다. 제일 유명한 프락터&갬블이 있고요. 유럽의 SC, 그 다음에 아시아를 거의 장악하고 있는 일본의 유리창, 그 다음에 국내 기업으로는 LG라든지 대한볼품, 모나리자 이런 회사들이 저희 회사의 경쟁사가 되겠습니다. 저희 과거에 이 도표는 10년 전에 그리고 거기서부터 다시 거슬러 올라가서 거의 10년 동안에 저희 회사의 주요 지금 방금 소개해드린 여성용품의 시장 점유율이 얼마나 떨어졌던가 그 위기를 설명을 해주는 차트가 되겠어요. 95년에 여기서 YK는 저희 유한-킴벌리를 이제부터는 YK라고 부르겠습니다. 저희가 시장 점유율이 20%가 안 되고요. P&G가 시장을 석권하고 그리고 그 당시에 10년 전이 되겠습니다만은 저희 여성용품에서 P&G 시장 점유율의 3분의 1 그리고 그 부분에 있어서 이 손실을 보는 이 사업을 접어야 하는 위기에까지 갔었습니다. 그리고 모든 다른 부문에서도 이 세계적인 이 브랜드들이 전부 한국에 들어와서 경쟁을 하고 있었고요. 게다가 아주 극심한 노사 분규가 있었습니다. 그때가 95년이었는데요. 그때 저희가 기로에 섰습니다. 이 총체적인 혁신을 할 것이냐, 그냥 여기서 주저앉을 것이냐. 그래서 저희는 총체적인 혁신을 하는 길을 선택을 했던 것입니다. 그래서 그 이후 최근 10년, 아까 보셨던 똑같은 여성용품의 시장 점유율이 되겠습니다. 저희가 다시 여러 부문의 혁신을 통해서 시장 점유율 1위를 차지를 하게 됐습니다. 아주 극적인 반전을 했고요. 이 여성용품뿐만이 아니고 이 모든 부문에서 지난 10년간 시장 점유율을 21%를 올렸는데 저희 유한-킴벌리와 YK와 P&G의 경쟁 상황만 보면 지금 방금 보신 여성용품 이렇게 반전이 됐고요. 유아용품, 아기용품 이렇게 차이가 더 벌어졌고요. 그 다음에 두루마리, 화장실용 화장지 그리고 클리넥스, 페이셜 미용 화장지의 경우 이렇게 모든 분야에 있어서 현격한 여기 P&G만 대상으로 넣습니다만은 모든 경쟁사와의 차이가 이렇게 현격하게 벌어지게 됐습니다. 그리고 또 킴벌리 클락, 아까 킴벌리 클락가 저희 주주 회사 중에 하나라고 그랬는데요. 킴벌리 클락가 전 세계 추구할 수 있는 그런 수준에까지 이제 올라갔을 때 진정한 기업의 경쟁력이 있다라고 저는 믿습니다. 그래서 지금부터는 평상학습에 대한 부분을 좀 더 말씀을 드린다면은 저희가 흔히 알기 쉽게 3H 매니지먼트 시스템이라고 부릅니다. Hand, Head, Heart. 이것을 우리 휴먼 리소스의 세 가지 많은 리소스가 있지만 이렇게 셋으로 나눌 수가 있다고 본다면은 우리가 손발을 이용하는 것, 열심히 일하는 것, 더 많이 뛰는 것이 핸드라고 한다면 지식 경영, 사람에게 근로자에게 머리가 있다는 사실을 인정해가지고 지식 경영을 할 수 있게 한다는 걸 머리까지 쓰는 것인데 손만 사용하면 그 사람의 종업원들의 모든 포텐셜의 1-20%밖에 사용 못한다라고 한다면 머리까지 사용한다면 30-40%까지 그 다음에 종업원에게 하트라고 하는 무진장한 리소스가 있는데 이것까지 다 사용하게 해준다면 그 포텐셜의 70-80%까지 다 나오는 거 아닌가. 그러면 우리 경영자의 책임은 우리 종업원들의 하트까지 다 나오게 하는, 다 개발이 되게 하는, 건강하게 개발이 되게 하고 다 사용하게 하는 것이 경영자의 책임이 아닌가. 이 하트라는 것이 우리 열정이 그 안에 들어있고요. 책임감이 있고 자존심이 있고 주인의식이 있고 그 모든 것이 그 하트에 속하는 것인데 그것을 어떻게 발현시킬 것인가 하는 것이 저희 경영진이 고민을 했던 부분입니다. 그래서 모든 부분에서 혁신을 했습니다만은 뭐 크게 보면은 조직 스트럭처를 다 바꿨고요. 그 다음에 이 BPR, 비즈니스 프로세스 리디자인 해가지고 모든 프로세스를 끊임없이 혁신을 해서 non-value-adding 프로세스는 다 날리고요. 이러한 모든 것이 지속적으로 우리 종업원들의 손에 의해서 혁신이 일어나고요. 그 다음에 ERP 시스템은 저희는 SAP R3를 사용하고 있습니다만 조각조각 돼 있던 시스템이 통합돼서 온라인 리얼타임으로. 그래서 저희는 회계 정보가 매월 클로즈아웃 되면은 1일이면은 모든 재무제표가 그 담당자 손에서 그냥 나오는 그런 수준에까지 갖고 이 세 가지 부문의 혁신이 지속적으로 이루어지고 있습니다. 그 다음에 이제 지식을 기반으로 한 평생학습 조직, 이것이 이제 하나의 요체가 되겠습니다. 생산 현장은 3개 공장에 약 1000여 명의 사원들이 일하고 있습니다만 과거에 10년 전에는 3조 3교대로 돌아갔습니다. 24시간 가동돼야 되기 때문에 한 조가 8시간씩 3조 일하면 24시간이 되죠. 그러나 그렇게 쳇바퀴처럼 돌아가는 그 조직 하에서 생산성과 안전성과 이 모든 것이 더 이상 증진이 될 수가 없는 그 한계에 부딪혔습니다. 그래서 4조 2교대, 그 다음에 1인당 연평균 300시간 이상 공부를 하는, 그 다음에 UA팀 해가지고 모든 혁신팀들이 각 분야에 있고요. 각 라인뿐만 아니라 기능 조직, 그리고 모든 사람이 한 가지 책임뿐만이 아니라 다기능과 여러 가지 책임을 동시에 맡는. 그래서 이제 이건 근무표가 되겠습니다만 4개조가 나흘 일하고 나흘 쉬고 나흘 일하고 나흘 쉬는, 그리고 나흘 쉬는 턴 가운데 하루는 공부를 하는 이제 그런 조직표가 되겠습니다. 그래서 과거에는 사람들이 일에 치여서 고단한 사람들이 자기 몸 하나 겨우 지탱하는 사람이 몸과 마음과 정서와 영혼의 재충전이 불가능했죠. 그러나 이제 와서는 모든 일을 기반으로 해서 건강과 지식의 재충전과 가족을 돌볼 수 있는, 그리고 사회적 활동을 하고 남을 배려하는 자원봉사 활동을 하는, 그리고 자아실현을 하는 수준까지 갔습니다. 그래서 저희 과거에 10년 전에 연평균 1인당 54시간 공부하던 것을 지금은 전사가 공이 300시간 이상 공부 내지는 팀빌딩 내지는 팀 활동을 통해서 문제를 해결하는 그런 데 쓰고 있고요. 각 공장마다 많은 교육 프로그램이 있습니다만 약 60%를 업무와 직결되는 직무교육, 40%를 인성교육이라든지 여러 가지 그 퍼스널 스킬 쪽에 프로그램들이 개발이 되어 있어서 카페테리아식으로 사용할 수 있게 이렇게 됐고요. 그리고 전 사원이 모든 그 하이 인볼브먼트 조직이라고 그러죠. 그 참여적 조직 해가지고 그 아이디어를 내고 서제스션을 해서 평균 1인당 한 달에 한 건씩 내고 그것이 실천에 옮겨져 왔습니다. 그 다음에 퀄리티는 100만 개당 소비자 불만으로 돌아오는 율인데 노스 아메리카가 과거에는 세계 베스트 프랙티스로서 벤치마킹 대상이 됐었는데 NA가 노스 아메리칸. 저희 대전과 군포가 훨씬 더 낫고요. 여성용품 오른쪽의 경우도 북미주보다는 우리 한국이 훨씬 퀄리티가 좋아졌습니다. 그리고 생산성도 끊임없이 종업원들의 아이디어와 열성에 의해서 이것이 예를 들면 시간당 42 스탠다드 유닛을 만든다는 이야기인데요. 세계에서 월드 베스트입니다. 밑에 것은 웨이스트인데 거의 제로 수준이고요. 그렇게 해서 이제 요약을 한다면 이 평생학습과 끊임없는 혁신에 의해서 퀄리티와 윤리적인 경영과 이 환경 경영과 지식 경영 이것을 전부 아울러서 결함을 용납하지 않는 퀄리티 그리고 비리와 비윤리적인 것을 조금 더 용납하지 않는 제로 톨러런스 그리고 환경을 생각하는 제로 디스차지 그리고 웨이스트를 제로 수준으로 가는 쪽의 이 경영 활동을 통해서 고객 만족을 이루었다고 보고요. 저희가 이제 CEO만이 리더가 아니고 우리 모두가 리더인데 예를 들어 CEO의 역할은 Chief Executive Officer뿐만이 아니라 Chief Ethics, Environment, Education 이 모든 부분이 리더들이 앞장서지 않고 담당자 몇 사람에게 시켜서 될 일이 아니다 하는 것을 저희가 지난 10년간 탑에서부터 변화를 리드해온 그 결과를 저희가 이렇게 보고를 드리고요. 그래야만 신뢰와 존경을 얻을 수 있고 끊임없는 혁신이 일어날 수 있다. 그렇게 해서 지속 가능한 그 건강한 성장이 가능하다. 이렇게 저희가 요약을 해봤습니다.
안녕하십니까, 이영현입니다. 제가 자료를 영어로 준비를 했는데 한 3분 전에 그냥 우리말로 프레젠트를 하기로 결정을 했습니다. 약간 혼란이 있을지 모르겠습니다. 오늘 이 중요한 글로벌 포럼에서 이 프레젠트할 기회를 갖게 된 것을 대단히 영광으로 생각하면서 제가 오늘 발표할 내용은 학습 조직 개념을 실제 회사에서 받아들여서 이렇게 통합한 사례를 설명을 하겠습니다. 저는 가능하면 지금까지 각국의 우수 사례 그리고 우리나라 유한-킴벌리 사례도 여러분들이 보셨기 때문에 그런 것들을 우리 정책하고 어떻게 관련을 시킬 것인가 하는 측면에서 접근했습니다. 제가 오늘 프레젠테이션 할 순서는 먼저 학습 조직의 그 배경에 대해서 간략하게 말씀을 드리고요. 그 다음에 학습 조직에 대한 그 개념이라든지 여러 가지 좀 컨셉츄얼한 학술적인 얘기를 한 다음에 우리나라에서 이 학습 조직 개념을 받아들여서 이 발전해온 과정을 설명하겠습니다. 그 다음에 실제 우리나라의 기업들은 학습 조직에 어느 정도의 수준에 와 있는가 그 서베이 결과를 가지고 말씀드리겠고요. 그러면 이런 우리 연구들이 어떤 시사점을 가지고 있고 이런 것들이 향후 정책 과제에 어떤 의미를 주는가 정책적 함의를 살펴보도록 하겠습니다. 학습 조직이 등장하게 된 배경은 여러분들이 너무 잘 아시겠지만 급변하는 경영 환경은 기업에 계속적으로 혁신할 필요성을 가지게 되었고 이 선진 기업들은 학습 조직으로 그러니까 이렇게 트랜스폼할 필요성을 느꼈습니다. 이런 그러니까 혁신과 학습 조직화에서 인적자원 개발 패러다임의 변화도 필요로 하게 됐는데 전통적인 HRD 패러다임이 형식적인 교육과 훈련에 포커스를 뒀다면 이제는 근본적으로 변화, 그러니까 패러다임 시프트가 일어나게 됐는데, 그걸 이제 학습을 강조하게 된 것입니다. 그래서 이렇게 학습 조직을 구축하게 된 선진 기업에서는 이 학습은 새로운 형태의 업무이다, 이렇게 볼 수 있고요. 이제 워크플레이스가, 그러니까 작업 현장은 일하는 장소, 일뿐만 아니라 나아가서 학습하는 장소로 변하게 됐다 하는 것입니다. 이제 연구소에서 왔기 때문에 조금 그 이론적인 거를 한번 얘기를 하고 싶은데요. 이 러닝 오거나이제이션 학습 조직 개념을 발전시킨 그 피터 쌩의 는 학습 조직의 아주 가장 중요한 그 5가지의 그 요소를 이렇게 얘기를 했습니다. System Thinking, Building Shared Vision, Mental Models, Personal Mastery, 그리고 Team Learning. 그 피터 쌩에 의하면 학습 조직은 사람들이 계속해서 그러니까 그들이 그러니까 실제로 원하는 결과를 창조할 역량을 확장하고 쭉 여러분도 보시면 되고요. 마지막으로 사람들이 계속적으로 서로 학습하는 방법을 학습하는 조직이다, 이렇게 설명을 했습니다. 이 학습 조직에서는 모든 수준에서 그 학습을 강조하고 있습니다. 다른 말로 말하자면 개인 학습, 그리고 팀 학습, 조직 학습, 모든 수준에서 학습이 일어나야 함을 강조하고 있습니다. 그럼 이러한 학습 조직의 개념이 우리나라에서 어떻게 이발해 왔는가 말씀드리자면 1990년대 초에 학습 조직 이론이 우리나라에 소개됐는데 이제 주로 그 학술 분야, 그 아카데믹 필드에 소개가 되었고요. 1990년 중반에 대기업 그 러닝센터, 그러니까 연수원을 중심으로 대기업들이 학습 조직을 회사에 적용하는 그런 노력을 해왔습니다. 이렇게 외국에 가서 우수 사례를 보고 이걸 도입을 하고 이런 노력을 한참 하는 과정에서 아시아 경제 위기를 맞이하면서 기업들은 우선 그 연수원에 예산을 삭감하고 인력을 삭감하면서 잠시 주춤하게 되었던 것이죠. 그러다가 2000년대 초에 다시 이제 그 조직 이론의 지식 경영이 이제 굉장히 그 관심을 끌게 되면서 특히 이제 대기업들이 지식 경영을 이렇게 도입하는 그런 기업들은 지식 경영 시스템의 하나의 그 일환으로서 학습 조직 체제를 구축하게 된 것입니다. 그러다가 이제 2000년대에 이르러서 정부가 학습 조직에 대한 관심을 갖게 되었는데 그것은 이제 근래에 평생학습이라든지 인적자원 개발인지 이런 개념들이 그 관심에 초점을 대면서 정부에서도 이 개념에 관심을 갖게 됐습니다. 그런 데는 많은 그 연구자 그리고 우리 체어로 앉아 계신 그 장영철 교수님 이런 분들이 많은 공헌을 하셨죠. 근래에 정부에서는 이 워크플레이스에서 학습을 촉진하기 위한 여러 정부의 그 지원 사업을 하고 있는데요. 그 중에서 대표적인 것 3개를 좀 소개를 해드리자면은 베스트 HRD 프로그램입니다. 아까 최역께서도 말씀하셨지만 베스트 HRD를 도입하는 과정에서 우리 이 세션에서 먼저 발표한 영국의 IIP 그리고 싱가포르의 PD 이런 사례를 벤치마킹했습니다. 여기 이제 교육인적자원부, 노동부, 산자부, 인발부 돼 있고, 현재 이 공공부만이 아니라, 그러니까 프라이빗 섹터만 아니라 금년도에는 이 공공부문도 이 인증을 하고 있습니다. 그래 이 세 개의 프로그램에 각각이 좀 정부 지원의 포커스는 다릅니다. 베스트 HRD는 에크리테이션, 그 인증에 좀 포커스를 두고 있고요. 뉴 패러다임은 방금 저보다 앞서서 발표하신 그 유한-킴벌리의 그 우수 사례를 보급해서 다른 기업들이 좀 이 유한-킴벌리의 평생학습 라이플롱 이런 사례를 좀 본받게 하자 하는 그 보급하는 그런 프로그램인데, 이 사업은 컨설팅 그리고 인포메이션 서비스에 포커스를 두고 있습니다. 그 다음으로 여러 개의 그 프로그램을 모아서 노동부의 중소기업 학습 조직 구축 사업이라고 하는 커다란 그 사업이 있습니다. 이러한 그 사업들은 금년도에도 이런 그 막대한 예산을 들여서 시행하고 있는데, 최근 저희가 그 자료를 입수해서 본것에 의하면 내년도에는 이러한 사업이 그 예산이 굉장히 증가되었고, 이러한 사업은 앞으로 확대될 전망을 가지고 있습니다. 그러면 이런 학습 조직을 어떻게 구축할 수 있을 것인가, 여기에 대해서 수많은 그 연구자들의 그 연구를 분석해서 하나의 그 프레임워크를 한번 만들어 봤는데요. 이 학습 조직 그 논의에서 초창기에는 학습 조직을 구축하는 데는 개개인의 그 특성, 여러 가지 뭐 행동이라든지 태도라든지 이런 개인의 특성이 중요하다 했는데, 이제 근래 들어서는 그 시스템이 중요하다 해서 시스템으로 비전과 전략, 리더십, 그리고 학습 문화, 학습 조직, 지식 경영 시스템, 그리고 보상 체계, 이런 것들을 들 수 있습니다. 이 프레임을 가지고 설문조사를 해서 한번 분석을 해봤습니다. 설문조사는 200개 기업에 500명 대상으로 했는데요. 이거 분석을 해보니까 이 6가지 각각의 그 시스템의 오전 척도로 볼 때, 여러분들 그 결과 보이죠? 조직 구조가 가장, 그러니까 우리나라의 기업은 아직도 이렇게 하이어라키컬한 그 조직을 가지고 있다 하는 것입니다. 좀 서둘러서 프레젠테이션 하겠습니다. 그럼 이 학습 조직의 구축 그 수준을 기업 규모별로 나눠보면은, 여러분들이 얼른 보시면 알겠지만 대기업들이 훨씬 그 여러 수준이 높습니다. 특히나 이 중에서도 그 돈이 많이 들어가는 인포메이션 시스템은 중소기업과 대기업이 굉장히 큰 차이가 있는 걸 알 수가 있습니다. 이걸 한번 그 인더스트리 산업별로 나누어 봤는데, IT 섹터가 모든 분야에 상당히 그 높은 수준의 학습조직 시스템을 보이고 있습니다. 실제로 그 현장에서 일어나는 그 러닝 액티비티를 봤는데, 여기 역시나 각 수준의 학습에 이 대기업 그리고 IT 섹터가 높은 수준을 보이고 있습니다. 훈련도 마찬가지 대기업이 높은 수준을 보이겠는데, 인더스트리는 별로 큰 차이를 보이지 않았습니다. 간단하지만 이런 그 조사 결과와 그리고 우리나라 그 학습 조직의 이볼루션 그 프로세스를 쭉 보면서 우리가 좀 그 임플리케이션, 팔라시 임플리케이션을 얻는다면은 그 인프라 측면에 아직 그 시스템 측면에서 발달 수준이, 그러니까 학습 수준이 좀 낮다는 거, 그리고 이런 발달 수준은, 그러니까 학습 조직 구축 수준은 기업의 규모와 그 인도수에 따라서 차이가 있다는 것을 알 수 있습니다. 향후 이러한 것들은 이미 우리 그 정부의 정책에 여러 가지 그 방안으로 이미 반영된 것도 있지만, 이 정부 역할이 기존의 교육 훈련을 좀 딜리버리 하는 것에서부터 이제 학습을 퍼실리테이트하는 그런 측면으로 나가야 한다는 것, 그 다음에 그 러닝 인프라스트럭처를 정부가 좀 구축해 주는데 그 서포트 해야 되겠다. 그리고 중소기업의 학습 지원을 위한 그동안에 수많은 그 노력이 있었지만 아직도 중소기업은 정부의 그 지원을 많이 필요로 한다 하는 것입니다. 이상으로 제 프레젠테이션을 마치겠습니다. 경태 교수 감사드리고요. 뭐 더 이상의 그 인포메이션 같은 거 필요하신 분은 이메일로 연락할 수 있겠습니다. 감사합니다.